Yes, I would like to pay respect to the Anishinaabe Algonquin people, who are the traditional guardians of the land where the Office of Results is in Ottawa. We at Results acknowledge their longstanding relationship with this territory, which remains unceded. These people have lived on this land since time immemorial. We are grateful to have the opportunity to be present in this territory and endeavor to respect and preserve it for generations to come. We invite you to take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat and tell us about the land where you are right now. We'll provide a link in the chat in case you are not familiar with the Indigenous territory you live in. For housekeeping purposes, please stay muted unless you're speaking, and we welcome you again in this annual general meeting. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks so much, Peace. So again, welcome everybody. I'm going to suggest people put it on the speaker view. We are recording, so just be mindful of that. And I am Chris Andes. I'm the Executive Director of Results Canada. I feel like this is a family reunion as always when we hold these annual general meetings. So I'm thrilled to be here with all of you. And, you know, friends, as we launch our AGM, I know we have some official business to come, but it's our habit to invite a special guest to open up things with us in conversation. And this year I am like absolutely thrilled to welcome our special guest, David Morley. There's so much to be said about David, as his list of accomplishments is incredibly long, too long to go into on a Zoom call, but a few kind of tidbits. He's an internationally recognized expert on international development, humanitarian response, child well-being. His imprint has been felt from the narrowest alleys of Brazilian favelas to behind rebel lines in the Republic of Congo to the corridors of power in Ottawa. He's a member of the Order of Canada. He's led numerous high-impact agencies, including Save the Children Canada, Médecins Sans Frontières, and most recently UNICEF Canada. He's written 2 books, both of which were Canadian bestsellers. He's co-chair of the Stephen Lewis Foundation and on the board of the Canadian Network for Women and Children's Health. And David, you know, most, I think importantly, has been a friend and an ally to Results for, you know, more than a decade. And so, David, I just want to welcome you to this AGM.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. It's great. I'm so happy to be here. And you know how much I think of Results. So it's a delight. And whenever you ask something, you know, I'll yes.
Thank you, David. So, David, just, you know, what I didn't share in the intro is that we are so privileged to be talking to you on a pretty monumental week. This is the eve of your retirement after an immensely impactful career, decades spent working in support of a better world. And maybe just to start, I'm wondering if you can share a bit about, you know, your reflections on that career journey. I'm sure you have lots of reflections at this point and deep thoughts this week. Like, what drew you to work in the first place? Maybe some highlights.
Well, thank you. And yes, Thursday's my last day. This is in fact my last, I'm here at home. This is the last day that I've got that I'm wearing the blue. I kind of got into this career by accident. I was unemployed. I wanted to, I'd graduated from Carleton in history. I wanted to be a history teacher. And but I needed to take a break, and I was living downtown on Cooper Street in a basement apartment. The view out of my window was the underside of cars. And a friend of my family who had been a moderator of the United Church, he was coming to town. By now, he was a member of the Ontario Human Rights Commission. He was one of the commissioners. So my mother got me to get dressed up, go see him. Maybe he could help me find a job. And I put on my tie. I went down to the Lord Elgin Hotel, to the Murray's restaurant that used to be there. And I started talking with Bruce, that was his name. And he said, you know, he could see that I was hinting, maybe I could get a job. And he said, you've got your life to work in an apartment, to work in an office building in Ottawa or Toronto. now is the time to leave Canada. And here's what you should do. You should go to this project with street children in Costa Rica, which he'd worked at, he'd volunteered at. And he said, here's the person. And Chris, I don't know if I ever told you this, I love this. He gave me the piece of paper with the name and the address, and that person has actually been my wife for the last 45 years. So it was, I thought, so every time I'm in Ottawa, I live in Toronto now, I always go to Murray, I also go to the Lord Elgin and give some thanks. So and you know, I was a middle-class Toronto boy, and I expected to find these kids who'd been destroyed by life, had been flattened, had nothing left, because they'd had lives that I couldn't imagine. And instead, I found this group of children who were feisty and funny and could make friends and were so smart. They'd had to be, because they'd been living on the streets. And after I was going to go for 3 months. And after about 2 weeks, I knew I wasn't going to become a history teacher. I didn't know what I was going to do, except that I wanted to help those kids, the particular ones that I knew and fell in love with, and just try. It sounds corny as anything, but I just wanted to try and do something to help kids make the world better, and didn't know what it would be. And I just wanted to do it. It filled my heart. And so I kind of stumbled into this.
I love that. I mean, you know how many of us stumble into this? It's great advice. There's a lot of young people on the call who are starting their career thinking maybe they want to do this kind of work. And I know we have another question on the page that I want, but I'm curious about the shift along the way. Did you follow your heart when other career opportunities, as I said, from Médecins Sans Frontières to Save the Children to UNICEF, they just presented themselves and you leapt, or how did that?
Yeah, you know, I stayed at Pueblito. The name of the organization that I went to in Costa Rica was Pueblito, and I came back to Canada, was fundraising, and became the executive director. It was a one-person office, so you know somebody had to be the executive director. And I worked there. My path was not this normal path, I think, or what people expect. I worked there. So I volunteered for 2 years. I ended up staying in Costa Rica, came back, worked there as the staff person. We grew a tiny bit in Canada, but I worked there for 18 years. And working for an unknown agency is not considered a career path, but I loved it. I mean, I loved it. But when I sensed, 18 years, that's a heck of a long time. And I didn't feel the fire anymore. I saw, the Médecins Sans Frontières job was advertised, and I applied and I got it. And with Médecins Sans Frontières, my move to Save the Children was different, because I found for me, I stayed at MSF for 7 years, but it's not a but. It's incredible humanitarian emergency response. But for my personality, I began to realize I like the long-term development. I like, it takes time, but there's the engagement with communities, that engagement going on. I like, you need the emergency response, but I'm better at the long term. And so then I went to Save the Children, and then to UNICEF.
Well, and thank goodness you have, because you've had such, I've known you along the pathways of different career fields, and you've had such tremendous impact. And, so much of it is just doing work that connects heart and brain, and then following your gut. It's about organs, I guess, but that's what it's been for me. But so, I guess along the way, David, this is one of those kind of curiosity questions, no right or wrong answer, of course. But so are there any people or stories that really we heard about the kids that you met in the first sort of stint, but are there any people or stories that really stand out as being particularly memorable or impactful, like the people or incidents that have stayed with you that kept you inspired to continue the work? And can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. I go back, as I've been getting ready to retire, I go back, and I do go back early to the beginning. And one of those kids in particular, I was doing after school programs, and his name was Giovanni, and he'd been a pickpocket and had kept a younger brother, sister alive on the streets by picking pockets and doing stuff. And he would say, I used to wear, because I'd wanted to be a history teacher, of course, I used to have a little tweed jacket that I would wear, sort of. And I'd keep my wallet on the inside. We'd be sitting next to each other helping him. I'd be helping him with his homework or something. And he'd suddenly, my wallet would be in his hand. And he'd go, David, you have to be careful. You never know who you're going to run into around here. And he always gave it back. And because he'd had to do that. He'd had to have that skill. And once I said to him, so, hey, what was it like to live on the streets, to sleep on the streets? And he got mad at me. He didn't smile at that. He said, David, I never slept on the streets, and I never let my brother and sister sleep on the streets. Every night I'd go to the garbage, I'd get newspaper, I'd lay it out on a park bench, and those were the sheets, because nobody was ever going to say that Giovanni Nunez could not give his brother and sister a bed when they really needed it. And so Giovanni was always a touchstone, and because of the internet, I mean, we're still, like, we're both grandparents now, because like I was 22 and he was 12, so it was like a massive gulf. Well, I'm 67, so he's 57. So and his life and that of his brother and sister and the other kids that I knew, well, I still get to know them through Facebook, and to see them and to know and to hear their response, because I began to wonder, like, what the heck am I doing here? What are we doing here as Canadians who, when we go to in that type of international service, are we getting in the way? Is it helpful? And I think there are many questions, good, important questions that are going on right now about what should our relationship be in international development. But what I did learn from Giovanni and from others, because we talk about it on Facebook, that they felt that we made a difference. There was a group of Canadian volunteers, and I think that's true. And what it isn't all the stupid cultural mistakes I made in Latin America, but it was, you were talking about it earlier. It was the heart and the brain and coming together to simply, it sounds corny, but simply to try and make the world better. And then, there are other people and oh my goodness, people in South Sudan. There's a young girl who she was 13, and she braved the civil war in order to come into a town which had been destroyed by ethnic violence, to take her grade 8 exams because education was going to build peace. When I think of Chris, we were there together. We were just there together in Kenya, those community health workers that we were with. Those people are changing the world. Those community health workers that we were with in Kibera in Nairobi. And those strong people, it's just a privilege to get to walk alongside them a little.
Yeah, it's life-changing in a way. And for the folks on the call, David's alluding to the fact that many of you will know results led a parliamentary delegation in January, and we spent a couple of days with UNICEF in Kenya, and we were incredibly fortunate that David came along for that part of the journey. And so when he speaks of traveling with us and the parliamentarians, it was really those kind of frontline health workers and traveling through Kibera, which is one of the largest sort of urban settlements in Africa. But it was just so powerful and so fueled with optimism and hope. And actually, you know, David, from the very local to the global, my next question, I guess, is because, I mean, I've been grappling a lot with this and thinking about it. And I think, you know, it's the kind of constant refrain in the headlines, but, you know, the world seems to be more complex than ever. It's a sea of converging crises, as we like to say: climate, conflict, pandemics, poverty. It's easy to become demoralized and give up. And I think I know where the answer might be coming from you. But one thing I've always valued in you, as everybody in the call is hearing now, is your sense of optimism, your unrelenting commitment to keep pushing forward. And the question is just simply, how do you stay motivated? How do we stay motivated and committed, even in the face of such seemingly immense global challenges?
You know, in my career path, I didn't talk about one nonprofit I worked at that was domestic. That was the only time that I started feeling, because it was a great, I was working with Adrian Clarkson and John Ralston Saul. I mean, that was a treat. That's before we knew each other. But what a gift it is, first of all, to be able to work for an organization or volunteer for an organization, because I volunteer for organizations too, that are making a difference, that are trying, you know, like we may just be pushing a little pebble up a hill, but God, we get to do it. And we get to see, we see, we get to work alongside, even if many people will never meet. But boy, they're incredible. It's like there are times that, you know, any of the places I've worked, I feel and I feel I get to be part of a chain of people trying to do good. It's hokey, just doing good, but I'm a simple guy, and that is that really moves me. And also the fact that since I've been at UNICEF, you know, I look back to when UNICEF was founded. And UNICEF was founded when there was famine in Europe, there was famine in China, there was famine in Japan, and there was all that refugee movement at the end of World War II. Like World War II just didn't end and everything was all sweet, right? There were awful things, and today, yes, there are awful things, and climate really is the different thing, I think. But we've got tools now that we could never imagine, and we've seen, you know, the under 5 mortality rate plummet in my lifetime. You know, when I was born, the under 5 mortality rate when I was born is this here. I was born here in Canada. Well, Kenya's is what it was in Canada, you know, the 50s and 60s. That's incredible progress for children. The number of people who are educated, we get to be part of this global revolution.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. But revolutions are fun. Well, I guess, you know, unless you're yeah, well, okay.
Yeah.
This revolution is pretty incredible.
Yeah, a revolution in child survival for sure. I mean, I even feel like when I started doing this work more than a dozen years ago, like malaria deaths have been cut in half. You know, there's been massive increases. Again, that child survival revolution has been impressive. There's lots of places to find pause and optimism, I guess. But so I'm just giving the audience a heads up that we will have time for a couple of questions from them after I ask you this next question, in case they want to kind of gear up. But you know, kind of speaking of that, you know, I just came back from the global vaccines. There was a global vaccine impact summit that was held by Gavi, the Global Vaccines Alliance. And I was just so inspired by the fact that Gavi, alongside UNICEF, really celebrated a milestone of having reached 1 billion children with vaccines since Gavi's inception. Like 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 kids are at least getting some vaccination. But, you know, there's still like 14 million, I think, children that are what they called 0-dose kids. They've never received a single vaccine. And I think, you know, concerted effort to reach those 0-dose kids would be like a real game changer. And this is kind of the theme for our year, game changers. So what do you see as some of the biggest opportunities for hope and impact, or the biggest potential game changers when it comes to child survival or health or well-being or any of the issues that we've worked on together, education, any of those things?
One is technical, and you mentioned it, malaria. There's been really, really good clinical trials in Burkina Faso that UNICEF was involved with, along with, I think it's AstraZeneca, that have had good results. And so if we can actually find a malaria vaccine, well, that would be incredible. But I also feel that the game changers, if more countries invest more, at least on the child survival side, in the community health workers. And those community health workers can start to, they're delivering frontline primary health care. And more children survive. And then when more children survive, you see that parents start saying, we're seeing it. Families get smaller because parents are going, okay, our kids are going to survive. I want to invest in my kids in a special way. And that means they advocate for more education. So we see advocating for education coming from these families whose kids are surviving more. I mean, it's not but it's, to me, the beginning of the virtuous circle that happens in so many places starts with the fewer under fives dying. Because and besides, what the heck? Having your child die, that breaks your heart.
Yeah.
And so there's that too, there's that toll on people as well as the toll on societies. So I think those community health workers are game changers, and they're leading the revolution. And this revolution is doing more. And Chris, okay, I know I've got all that stuff, but you're part of the revolution too. You and everybody at Results, right? Because we've been able to work together. I just hope everybody know. I think that Chris Denbies is a national treasure, and she's made an incredible difference in those two summits, in the Muskoka Summit, the Charlevoix Summit, and there were people like me. Sorry, Chris, I didn't know I was going to do this to you. There are people like me who knew how to deliver programs, and Chris knew how to do clever in the good sense, wise advocating and messaging with parliamentarians, and the combination was unbeatable. It was great. So sorry, Chris, I'll just move on now.
Yeah, thanks. Now that I'm all teary-eyed, but certainly, yeah, thank you for reminding us about the Muskoka Initiative, the Charlevoix Declaration. The people on this call, David, some of whom have been doing advocacy with Results for literally decades, and have been really instrumental in that child survival revolution, that commitment to a better world. We're really the driving force behind that. It was just a small part, but thank you for reminding me of that collaboration, because it was pretty amazing and powerful. So thank you for that. So I just wonder, just going to the audience, if we have maybe a moment or two for a couple of questions. I can't see if there's any hands up, or if you want to throw them in the Slack.
Blaze.
My hand's up, Chris.
Okay, so I'm going to take two questions in a row, and then David can respond to both. So Blaze, maybe first.
Yeah,
go ahead, Blaze.
Thank you, David. It's great to finally meet you after so many years. And your remarks remind a couple of stories, but I was the first full-time Results employee in a little basement office in Chapel Street. And I remember we did a lot of op-eds, and one was on essential medicines, and the campaign to try to get Big Pharma to do more with that. And you were with MSF at the time, very involved. And Alan Castles, my good friend and colleague, and I wrote one. I forget where it was published, but I remember it engendered a response from Big Pharma sort of saying, we are so doing a lot on essentials, and we even work with NGOs, and we have an agreement even with MSF to do this and that. And we thought, did we make a mistake? Are they really? And but within a day, there was an op-ed by you saying, rebutting that in unequivocal terms, we have never had an agreement with Big Pharma. We have no arrangement, and they're actually dragging their feet, just like Blaise and Alan said, and should do more. And I waited all this time to thank you. And
Oh, I love that.
and I just want to say as well that it really illustrated a point about a bias toward action, which is really a results thing. And we didn't have to talk and do wordsmithing of a draft and see if it fit with our policy and all that stuff. You just went and right there in print within a couple of days. So that was great.
That's awesome. Blaise is a pioneer.
That's great, Blaise. That brings back lots of memories of that particular fight on the patents. Yeah,
which was ultimately a victory, right? That was a big,
yeah. Is there one more question in the before we? Well, there is a question in the chat about day to day. Maybe that's our last question. Then we'll go to the closing one from me.
Well, my day to day. Well, Bruce McLeod might have been right, because there are times when my day to day looks like working in an office in Toronto. But it depends what you're going to be doing, because I think the people who are interested in, like, our government relations people, our advocacy people, who are spending a lot of time working together in coalition with organizations like Results and with volunteers to talk to politicians, talk to staffers, talk to each other. What are the best ways to move forward? And it's a great deal of work, rewarding, because I believe, Blaise, like, remembering back to then, I do think that usually the good guys win. Just sometimes it takes an awful long time. But it's and everything, one of the things too I find about working in an organization that's trying to make the world better, rights organization, trying to do action, is that everything we do gets to be suffused with meaning. Like, even when I'm doing an expense report or something, like, it's all part of, because the machinery that we're doing is filled with meaning, and that's a gift.
David, maybe one other question from the audience, and then I'll close. But so the question, I think, is a good one. What policy or commitment has made a big difference from your view in terms of something that you've worked on, we've worked on, the world has worked on, but you particularly?
I think for ending poverty, if I'm thinking of one thing, I come back to the virtuous cycle of the community health workers and of Muskoka, and because one of the things that Muskoka did right, first of all, is as I say, families didn't have to deal with the death of children, and that's so that's the emotional strain. It's more than strain, but then, because a lot of that money went into training community health workers, we were they're often who would get it's a small bit of money, but they get some money, and so it raises the level of education in a community, and it's these women who usually who are now getting income, and then they're going to deal with it, usually helping their families better than men will. And I mean, that's a very, very broad stroke, but it's statistically true. And so I really think that kind of social service policy it can lift all boats. And when I look back, I'm not going to go into other 5 things that I count that I think really made a difference. One of them was access to medicine place, and Muskoka is another, so I'm biased, but that's what I think.
I love it, and I agree with you. So there you go. It must be right.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Well, David, I can't thank you enough for being here with us. I really just wanted, in your closing moments with us, I wonder if you have any last reflections or advice for the dozens and dozens of results volunteers and staff and board members, advocates who are on the call. Over to you.
Never doubt, that what you're doing by volunteering with results it does not make a difference, because it does make a difference. Results make a difference, and all of us working together, volunteering together, coming together, I think we make a difference, and we see it in that child survival revolution. We see it in the places where things are going better. It's if we can stay away from conflict, if we can figure out the climate, things get better, and we can help make that happen. When peace comes, things get better, and I think we've seen it in many places. So what you do is what we all do, I think, is being peacemakers, and people say the UN doesn't work. So Chris, you're gonna have to mute me probably. People say the UN doesn't work. Well, Security Council doesn't work for keeping peace, perhaps, but agencies and NGOs and all of us, yeah, we work, and the world is better than it would have been otherwise because of all of this, all of the efforts that you do, that we do together by working together, and that is wonderful. It's not good enough yet, because it'll never end, but it's wonderful.
Those are beautiful thoughts from an incredible human being. And David, I have to tell you that you've been a personal inspiration and an ally over the years, and I'm so deeply inspired always by you and grateful. And we have in a minute, I'm going to ask everybody to turn off their mutes so that we can give you hurrah in the results fashion. But we also wanted to share with you this little, Denise, I don't know if you want to, we have made you an honorary member of Results Family for Life, the Champion and Friend Award, because you have been such a part of our campaigning and of our effort, and just the work that you do has been inspirational in terms of our efforts. So maybe everybody can unmute and we can all just thank David, full screens, maybe all of our cameras on, and just give you an absolute hurrah, because you're thrilled to be partnering with you, and we can't wait to see what's next, and we get to keep working with you. So thank you, David. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's
right.
Yeah, and thanks to everybody for the wonderful work you all do. And
thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Great. Wow, that was fabulous. Thank you, everybody, for joining in on that amazing conversation with an incredible person, an ally and friend to Results for many years. And with that, now I'm going to pass it on to Jean-Michel, our chair, who will start with the official part of our AGM. So over to you, Jean-Michel. I think you're on mute. Just put you on speaker. Do you see Jean-Michel? I know he was here. Oh, there we go.
Is this my cue, Chris?
Yes.
Sorry, I got disconnected there.
Oh, okay.
Just at the right time. Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon for friends on the West Coast. So this officially starts the formal portion of our annual general meeting. Sorry, I'm just got a Amber Alert, it seems, at the same time. So yeah, so this is the formal portion of our call. I guess we will take quorum maybe just after this, I think we normally ask Chris, our executive director, to give our annual executive director's report. So Chris, if you're open to that, I'll maybe ask you to give a quick update on our work over the past year.
Absolutely, and I'll apologize for so much of me on camera, but I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of an update in terms of this ED report. So first of all, thank you, everybody. It's, it really is a tremendous honor to be here with you all again this year to report on progress, provide some updates, share a few reflections. Each year as we approach the AGM, I scan the list of registrants and members and donors and board members and allies and partners and volunteers and fellows and staff. And I'm always struck by just how incredibly lucky I am to be working with and for an organization that attracts such a community of just incredible, powerful and committed individuals. And just how privileged I am to be working in support of Results Vision, a world where extreme poverty is relegated to the history books. That is just so powerful and so hopeful, as we've heard reinforced by our guest, David Morley, a few minutes ago. And again, how inspiring it is that the lever we choose to affect big change is informed and smart strategic advocacy with a network of volunteers who are so deeply committed to impact. So it's really an exciting place to be. And, it's the fuel that drives our campaigns, our commitment to hope and solutions, and our commitment to action, and our resolve to kind of see our mission come to fruition. So, over the past year, that resolve has ushered in more than a few significant wins in terms of the impact agenda, with perhaps the most, I think, impressive one that stands out for me is a $1.21 billion Canadian investment in the Global Fund to fight AIDS, TB, and malaria. Canada's commitment during the Global Fund 7th replenishment last fall represented the single largest investment Canada has ever made in any international financing institution for health. That's a significant and huge accomplishment, and Results played a leading role in the Fight for What Counts campaign, which is what we dubbed it. And many of you on the call were involved in that, including co-convening a really powerful coalition of about 15 diverse CSOs, civil society organizations, that really stood together in support of the Global Fund alongside all of you, hundreds of Results volunteers. And, to be honest, when we set a really bold, ambitious target of that $1.2 billion ask of Canada, which represented a 30% increase from the previous replenishment, I thought we were crazy. I thought it was an impossibility. But, it just taught me something after doing advocacy for so long, the recognition that don't talk yourself out of big and bold, ambitious goals, particularly when it's about striving for a better world and a better world that is possible. Don't be conditioned to, accept scarcity as the riding sensibility. And we didn't give up, and hundreds of actions, dozens of Hill meetings, smart inside and outside advocacy, media publications, amplifying our call during Pride marches, securing new partners, securing endorsement from over 50 parliamentarians that all of you helped secure across political parties, and we hit our target. I'm so proud of that win, so proud of Results, proud of your leadership in securing it, but I'm especially proud of the impact that those resources will generate in the world for one of the world's highest impact global health mechanisms, the Global Fund. That investment will contribute to 20 million lives saved in the coming years and ease needless suffering in untold ways. It's a significant accomplishment, and one that, I think we should be really proud of playing a significant role in. But even with that incredible success, it's so impossible not to be cognizant of some of the the broader trends and shifting global realities that are continuing to affect our work, and also to define and redefine, what our metrics for impact are. It's becoming increasingly clear that succeeding in our mission to end poverty will require more than smart allocations of a hopefully increasing aid envelope. It'll also require a real reckoning and retooling of global structures and institutions that are still too tethered to the twin pariahs of colonialism and oppression in their design and in the way that they operate. So, power is shifting without a doubt, but it needs a shove. And as we look ahead to the results of the future, I think a clear sense of how we can support that shift must be, really part of that mission. So these are big questions. We certainly don't and won't have all of the answers to those questions, but it's important that we're asking them and that we're going to be working on those and thinking them through with all of you as this year proceeds. So, and a baseline for this important reckoning, this thinking, this work, the development of a new strategic plan, we're going to continue to build out and strengthen our organization and our movement. So it gives me great joy to report that today we have more than 500 volunteers, including close to 60 fellows across Canada, who are actively engaged in our mission. And, over the years, I've been fortunate to have a front row seat to the impact that can be achieved when results volunteers really push themselves, when you push yourselves to be bold. And it's a vantage point that really never disappoints. So, and also as another way to build out our movement, I'd like to share that in addition to helping our own volunteers flex their advocacy muscles, we just launched an initiative called Advocacy Accelerator. And I think there's going to be a link to this in the chat, but the Advocacy Accelerator is an earned revenue model, which affords results the opportunity to light up others to the power of impact of advocacy as a lever for change. So I hope you'll help us spread the word. Already we've provided training to close to a dozen organizations, and through those organizations, hundreds of advocates committed to social justice, both in Canada, but also around the world. So finally, as I close out this report, I'd like to give a shout out to our exceptional team of board and staff, many of whom are on the call. And I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the board for your constant support, because it has been unrelenting. And also, and especially, I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the hard work and dedication of our staff team, whose commitment, resilience, and smarts continues to be a real inspiration. And you can meet our staff at the link that's in the chat as well. There's so much work to be done by all of us to repair and I hope chart a path towards a more just world. But even if the times feel kind of chaotic and blurred, we can be invigorated by the clarity and importance of our mission. So with that, I'll close and thank you again for your continued support and your engagement as part of the Results family and community. Over to you, Jean-Michel.
Thank you, Chris. I think most people are on mute, but if they weren't, we'd be hearing a lot of applause right now. Congratulations to you and the team for another fantastic year. Are there any questions for Chris? And maybe I'll just say in French, maybe I should have mentioned that in the introduction, but s'il y en a qui sont plus confortables de poser des questions en français ou d'intervenir en français, ça va me faire plaisir de traduire dans les deux sens. Donc, n'hésitez pas. So any questions for Chris? I'll take that as a no questions yet, but if you're sticking around and you've got a question later, feel free to jump in. All right, so that will move us to the more formal part of our meeting this evening. So to have the quorum at the AGM, our bylaws require that we have 10 members present who are not staff or board members. I was going around just earlier, and I think we've far exceeded the threshold set by our bylaws, so I think we've got quorum. Just for the record, everyone who's a member of Results Canada who aren't able to attend had a chance to do so by voting by proxy, and I think if we have received any proxies, it would have been sent to our secretary. As far as I'm aware, I don't think we've had any filed, right? So so that is it. The next part of our agenda was to ask our treasurer, Beth Gillis, to present the financial statements from the last fiscal year for Results Canada. I think Beth is there. I think I saw her earlier. There you go.
Yes, I'm here. All right, so I just wanted to highlight again the Results Canada staff. We had our first audit this year with our new auditors, Parker Prince Libano, and it went extremely well, mainly due to the hard work of the staff at Results Canada. We yet again experienced a clean audit. We didn't encounter any issues or real things to highlight in this conversation. We had actually great increase in revenues and income this year due to some increased grant funding and all these leveraged kind of contracts and things. And so it's really been a great year for results in terms of funding for all the impact that Chris was just telling you all about. So we had a really great year financially, and no concerns brought up by the auditor regarding financial operations or ongoing operations with an adequate surplus in place to ensure results can continue to have that impact going forward. So I believe anyone who wanted a physical copy of the statements were able to request one in advance. So if anyone has any questions for myself or Chris, we'd be happy to take them now.
Thank you, Beth. Are there any questions for Beth? Going once, going twice. If not, then I will ask because we as a membership need to approve the audited financial statements. So I will ask for a motion from someone to approve the financial statements as presented.
Hello, my name is Jean-François Tardif, and I would like to move that the financial statements be adopted as presented.
Merci
And my name,
beaucoup.
my
go
name
ahead.
is Sherry Moran, Jean-Michel, and I am happy to second the motion.
Great. So we've got a mover and a seconder. Everyone in favor say aye, or just raise your hand, or
Aye.
all right.
Aye.
Thank
Aye.
you. Anyone opposed or abstaining? I don't see anyone, so the motion is carried. Thank you. The next part of our agenda is to elect the board of directors for Results Canada. I wonder if someone on staff is able to put up the slate of board candidates on the screen for everyone to see. So this is the proposed list of, we've got both returning and new or potentially new board members. So the proposed directors for this coming year are Ainsley Morris, myself, Elizabeth Dove, Janet Butler McPhee, Beth Gillis, Jen Wani, Emrul Hassan, Evelyn Guédon, and Ahmed Irfan. The board also went through a recruitment process, and so there are 3 additional candidates that are being proposed for the board, and you can see them here. Chiamaka Ifediora, Sebastian Muirman, and Amos Oyebiyi. I'm sorry, Amos, if I didn't pronounce your name right. I also want to take just a second to acknowledge Rasima Alam. She's been on our boards for, I believe, what's been now 2 consecutive terms. So she's termed out. She needed to step off the board. I just wanted to thank and acknowledge the contribution she's made on the board the last 6 years. And so with that, I'll ask for a motion to accept this list of individuals as Results Canada directors for 2023.
My name is Norm Filial. I move that the full slate of candidates proposed for 2023 be approved as directors of Results.
Thanks, Norm. Do I have a seconder?
Yeah, this is Blaise Salmon. I second the motion.
Thank you, Blaise. All in favor? I see some movement, some raised hands. So maybe it'll be clear. Anyone opposed or abstaining? I'll just wait for those hands to come down. All right, so no abstentions. All right, and no votes against. So the motion is carried. The next and last point we needed to go through, as we always do every year, is to appoint auditors for the coming fiscal year. And so can I ask for a motion in that respect?
It's Sherry Moran again, and I move that Parker Prinz Labano Chartered Professional Accountants Professional Corporation of Ottawa be appointed as the auditors of Results for the financial year ending December 31st, 2023.
Thanks, Sherry. Do I have a seconder?
My name is Jean-François Tardif again, and I second the motion.
Thanks, Jean-François. All in favor? Anyone opposed or abstaining? So I think everyone's in favor, and so I'll declare that motion carried. I guess before we wrap it up, we've wrapped up the formal portion of our AGM, but before we actually adjourn the meeting, as the chair of Results Canada's Board of Directors, I just wanted to take another minute to echo what Chris said earlier, to thank our volunteers across the country, the people who've been serving on the Board of Directors, the partners, our donors, and our exceptional staff. I think those of you who had a chance, like me, to attend the national conference that took place not too long ago. It was great to see everybody just gathered in one place. And, Chris often talks to me and other people on the board about the fantastic staff that we have. And it was really nice to meet you in person and get a chance to know you a little bit better. And I just wanted to acknowledge the significant efforts that you all make to the success of this organization. I think, we've again demonstrated that, by having volunteers support staff, staff support volunteers, the board supporting both the staff, and it seems to be just a series of reinforcing relationships across the organization. But I think we would all acknowledge that none of us would be able to do what we do without everyone else's support. So just wanted to take a second to acknowledge that it's a critical part of Results, and it's one part that I find very invigorating whenever I get involved and continue to be involved with the organization. So, and I wanted to thank Chris as well. She's been, I can't give her as good kudos as she got from her friend David earlier, but just want to thank her as well for everything she's been doing. So with that, I will ask for, unless there's other questions or other business, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting. And I see I've got a hand up from Nancy, so I don't know if you want to join the meeting or if you've got a question.
Well, I have a question, but maybe it's not up for everybody. I learned of your wonderful organization through a course at McGill University on global health. They were members of the group, and I know that you're fighting TB, malaria, and AIDS, but is there a plan for adding COVID to the mix? That's my question.
Thank you. I think I will ask Chris if she can.
Sure. Yeah. Nancy, it's a great question. We do work on not just AIDS, TB, and malaria. I mean, the Global Fund was just a significant win last year, but certainly throughout the COVID pandemic, Results was really at the forefront, and volunteers were really at the forefront of fighting for an equitable global response to end COVID everywhere. And I can honestly say that helped generate, over $2 billion from the government of Canada to support diagnostics, therapeutics, health system strengthening, and vaccines across the pillars, so that Canada was one of the few countries to kind of meet its fair share contribution. So yeah, and in addition to global health, just to be clear, even though I highlighted the Global Fund because it was a significant win, we really do work on a number of different issues, including access to quality education, economic inclusion, redrawing and supporting better equitable distribution of wealth through the World Bank and other mechanisms. So Results volunteers have been involved in a lot of things. You can look to our website for the variety of issues that we work on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Any other question? Is someone ready to?
I think Stephen was good.
Stephen?
My name is Stephen St. Lee, and I moved to adjourn the meeting.
Thanks,
I second
Stephen.
the motion.
All right, got Blaise seconding. That means it's carried. So this adjourns our 2023 Results Canada AGM. Thanks everybody for taking some time to be with us. Look forward to seeing you all again soon, hopefully.
And thank you, Jean-Michel.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Chris.
everybody.
Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Thanks, Jean-Michel.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good job, everyone.
Good job, everyone. Congratulations.